Hi, this is Shu with some interesting revelations, if you might call it that, I have with the Jordan 35s. The colorways, I've been looking forward to this colorway, but um, it looked good on paper. But the more I look at it, the more I wear it, it feels like the first prototype colorway looks pretty funky and fresh and nice. So that's one main difference I think the 35s and 34s had. The 34s, whatever colorway they gave you, it looked just as good. And also in a bad way, none of them stood out. They just all looked like Jordan 34s, except for those taco versions that Jason Tatum wore during the playoffs. That was very, very unique. So that's one thing unique about the Jordan 35s. People hated the designs, but I think it's growing on us. And I think the first colorway, they thought it was just too wacky, just like the response they've had for the Pump Fury when the Reebok first released it. People were saying, what is wrong with that colorway? But now we go for that first colorway that we had in the 90s, and we look back at it with fondness, and we want more of it. The first big difference between the 34s and the 35 is, of course, the Eclipse plate. It's only here in the midfoot area. It gets the job in terms of um, lateral stability, but in terms of that springy coil, that springy bounciness that you've got from the 34s, which extend all the way to the heel and all the way to almost to the toe area. Yes, it's all the way here. If you like that springiness, you're not gonna find it in the 35s. But if you did not like that springiness, for me, it was not something that's incredible. It's not like the Athletic Propulsion Lab but product, which no one think works. The downside of it was the plate was all the way here, so the heel cushioning and the heel surface area when it comes to gripping the court was a little bit of a problem, because if you actually have very good mechanics and you're always stepping forward like this and moving laterally flat-footed, that's okay, because on the core you do feel the cushioning working and there's a level of stability around you. But more often than not, when we're playing basketball, there's a tendency for us to be stepping on one corner or another corner, whether it's the medial or lateral side. And when that happens, because of this firmness, it's just plastic and rubber, so you tend to slip and slide. That could happen to you. That problem does not exist in the 35s, because overall, it's just foam all around with a thick zoom air unit in the heel. So that's the choice you'll have to make. Stability with a little bit less of a cushioning and a little bit of a risky slip and slide danger zones on the corners, or just safe, firm grip all around and a good overall comfortable cushioning. Speaking of cushioning, even if they have a huge volume zoom air on the heel, you don't really feel that large volume zoomer. You just know that there's a certain level of cushioning in the heel, but it feels very minimal. Overall, the shoe itself feels very low to the ground, lower to the ground than the 34s. Another difference is the midsole material is a lot firmer and denser in the 35s than the 34s. The 34 midsoles, you can feel it. It's soft to the touch, and you can feel it working in tandem with the cushioning. But it's actually slightly higher off the ground than the 35s. It's quite a mystery. So this is higher off the ground but firmer. So the cushioning is it eats away at the cushioning a little bit. So even if they use the same volume zoom air on the forefoot as 34s, you definitely feel the zoom air working better in the 34s, and the 35s it feels a little bit firmer. And on the heel, even though they actually have zoom air and a midsole that's freed from this the clutches of the plastic plates, it just feels like an ordinary plain minimal airbag in the heel, so you don't feel the supposed effects, the impact protection of the full length, full volume zoom air. Yeah, pretty ironic. And the outsole, that's another interesting point I found. Well, doesn't mean that when the outsole has it's closer together and the grooves seem to be more complicated, it doesn't always work that way. Sometimes having a certain level of spacing and distance between the herringbone pattern actually works better. So the 34s has a bit of a better grip and friction and traction than the 35s. The 35s okay overall, but it's a little bit more sensitive to dust, and it doesn't have that much of a hard of a bite as the 34s, which I found shocking. I guess it goes back to the lesson we learned from models like the Donnie Shoe 1. The patterns are so closely knitted together and so thick you think that work, but they are the worst traction ever. So closely knitted grooves doesn't always translate or equate to excellent traction. I'm not saying the 35 is trash, definitely better than most Adidas models, but compared to 34s, 34 has a bit of a better traction there. So there you go. In terms of fit, the interesting thing is the 34s, I had to go up half a size because it felt a bit narrow. So it's narrower than 35. The 35 actually runs a little bit shorter than the 34s. That's strange. So this is a bit more giving laterally, but in terms of length, it's a little bit tighter than the 34s. That's unique. In the old days, the Jordans in the 90s, you could go for, if you're a size 9 works all the time without any hitches or surprises, but that seems to be the case in the 21st century with the Jordan brand and most basketball shoes out there. What else can I talk about? Yes, the comfort in terms of the upper. I've complained about this particular part. This particular part seems to dig into my ankles a little bit. I almost felt like it was unwearable. I actually had to put some protective layers to prevent that blister from happening every time. But the 35s don't have the problem. It's smooth all over, and also another side effect of the 34s is that they actually have a very round, homogeneous padding without any articulation, so you might feel a little bit of a slip and slide there. As you can tell, the heel is not exactly clutching inward either, so heel slip might have been an issue for some. Even if you tighten the laces, it doesn't seem to clutch or hug you as much as it should. Don't have that problem with the 35s, but the 35 has its own set of problems. It does have very nice padding around, articulated paddings to make sure the Achilles and the ankles are hugged and clutched and secured in place. But look at these little pointy parts. Because the material is very stiff, starchy, plasticky type of hardened mesh material, it's not going to be changing, or it's not going to break in like other materials. So if you feel some sort of pinching sensation on your first try when you tighten the shoe and try to move around, it's not going to change, so forget about it unless you wear those the ankle braces from Zomps that Curry used to wear, which is like plastic plates around your ankles. Then you can wear this. But other than that, if your Achilles is exposed and you feel there's some chafing here, try to skip this. It's not going to work for you. Wait for the low versions, because definitely, just like what they did with the 34s, Nike will release a low cut version for sure. Maybe not. Who knows? Well, they got the Z code coming up for Zion Williamson, so maybe they'll kind of go cheap and not release a low-cut version of Jordans. But so far, we've always seen the low-cut versions of the main signature Jordan model, so I expect them to do the same this time again. That's right. Another thing is that the similarity that the 35s had with the 34s is that the zoom air is huge, but it only comes up until here, and the toe area, it feels like your toes are practically touching the outsole and the floor. So the cushioning, even though they do provide an ortholite insole, this is not enough. It's very thin, it's very dense, and overall it doesn't really complement the Zoom Air cushioning. So I use like ordinary EVA cushioning from old Nike models that's a little bit thicker and provides a little bit more of an extra cushioning softness on the toe area, because again, the toe areas, you're gonna feel that hardness just like the 34s, in some sense even worse than the 34s, because the insole is even thinner and denser than the 34s. So you will have to find some other means, find other insoles that would work for you to make sure you're not going to be just hitting the tip of your toes on hard surface area that the Jordan 34s and 35s provide.